Let's talk about game rules and their difference with configs. Hello everyone, this is Ali Reza. Welcome to the Mentor Code Lab. Up until now, what we had was a config file sitting on the hard drive, and we could go and open that config file with any text editor and change the values there. However, there is one other way of setting parameters in Minecraft, and that is game rules. There are differences between the configs and game rules. For example, to change a config and see the effect in the game, you have to close the game, completely turn off the Minecraft, change the values in the config, and rerun the game. There is a chance that maybe the developer of a mod will give you a command to reload the configs, but honestly, they are really rare. So that's the normal process of changing a config. In other times, you can't change a config in a runtime. On the other hand, game rules can be changed at runtime, even using a simple command in the game. And guess what? The command is /game rule. And you may have already used it to turn off the weather, raining, or stop the progress of the time in your development environment, or I don't know, any other game rule that you may know how to use it by command. The other difference is that configs are per game instance. It means that if you have a Minecraft instance that has a configs folder, every world you create on that game instance will read the same config. If you want to have a value that can be used inside one special world and not in the other world, and you want to switch the game between these two, you have to again turn off the Minecraft, go change the config, load the Minecraft game, and go into the second world. You can't change the config between the worlds. You may think like this, well, what if I close a world, change the config, and run the second world? That will not work. You have to close the Minecraft and reload the Minecraft so that the loading process works and reads the config from scratch. So if you want to change the value from one world to the other world, especially if those two worlds are sitting in the same game instance, you have to close the game, change the value, rerun the game. However, game rules are per world. So you can just create a world with some dedicated game rules and then come out of the world to the main menu, create another world with the totally different game rules. And each time you enter a world, it will read its own game rules. So these two differences are the main differences. If you understand the first difference, you will understand that configs are not meant to be changed at runtime. However, game rules are meant to be changeable at runtime. Also, configs are per game instance, but game rules are per world instance. Because of that, when I want to work with the Go blocks, the thing that I'm gonna program from now on until they are finished, I want to have a game rule, or actually more than one game rule, few game rules, because you may want to change a rule and let the Go block work in one world, and you will limit it in another world, and at the same time, you can switch between these two worlds easily. However, there are part of the settings that I may want to put inside a config, and I'm debating on what needs to go into the config, what needs to go into the rules. But first of all, the very first thing is that we need to have our own game rule class. So I will create a class, I will call it rules. And inside the rules, of course, we need to have a public static void in it. And of course, from our main, we need to read that in it. So on initialize. Now, where to read that on initialize? I would say right after the configs. Wherever I'm reading the configs, if I find it, it's on the top, even before any initialization. It means that the very first thing here. So rules.init. And because it's not having that mod name in front, I will cut it from here and I will paste it right underneath it. So I know that this is our config section and the game rules section. Now, how do we define a game rule? The game rule is public static game rules from net Minecraft world dot key of type. Now, for the type, we will see what type of variable we want. If we want to turn on and off something, that's a boolean. If we want to change an integer, that would be int, and different type of the rules. So we have game rules dot, as you see, we have boolean rule, category, int rule, key, rule type, and etc. Okay, so we say boolean rule and we call it spread. Now, if I want to initialize it, all I have to say is that spread equals to game rule registry dot register. And if you notice, we have to sending a string as name and then a category and then the type. Okay. Now the category can be a category or custom game rule category. Now let's go with the custom game rule category and take a look at that. You see that it's a class that needs an identifier and the name as a text. So either you have to send in a normal game game rule or your custom game rule category. Let's go with the name first. We call it Goo spread. And then here for the category, I can say game rules dot category, as you see. And here, if I say dot, you see that it's an enumeration. So I have mobs, players, spawning, update, miscellaneous. I will go with the updates for time being. And then I will say game rule factory dot create Boolean rule. And here is the variable that we can send in, says default value, and by default it's true. Just like that, I added my own game rule. However, if I want to, I can say before this, I can say public identifier of game rule ID equals to, okay, here is one thing that I have as a library inside my GBase base helper dot identifier. Now we have the mod ID, comma, and here we need a path, and here we say goo dot, actually I will go with underline, goo underline rule. Okay, now mod ID is coming from main. It didn't have the underline. Okay, there we go, and please find it for me. Import to stat. So now that I have this ID, instead of this line, I will comment it and I will paste it and say, before that actually, let's see, I will say public static, and I should make this guy static final, custom game rule category, and we call it goo rule category equals to new, or because I didn't make it final, I can use it here. So I will say goo rule category equals to new game rule category. We have the identifier, game rule ID, and finally the name would be goo category, okay? And it needs to be a text. So I will say base helper dot, oh, I think I have it on reference. Yeah, translate, and here we say the goo underline category. Remember, the translate method will add the mod ID dot at the front, so I will convert this guy to dot, and maybe for the identifier, I will keep it as underline. Okay, here instead of update, I can simply use the goo rule category, and it will work. I prefer to have my own categories, but if you want to, you can use the predefined ones. After this guy, I have some things that I may want to add to the config system. But before that, I will have two more booleans. This is lava pump active, and this is water pump active. By default, I will set them to true, but soon when we have machines, I may want to turn them off. So this is lava pump active, this is water pump active, and this will change the name to lava pump goo active, water pump goo active. After these, well, this one would make sense if I put them inside the configs, but I want to show you an example of how you can have other things besides booleans. So we say public static, and let's copy this part, but this one is int rule, not boolean rule. So int rule, and the name will be spread distance. Another one I will use destroy distance. Another one I will say this is pump distance, and finally pump depth. As I said, these make more sense if I put them on the configs, simply because they should work the same on all the instances of the game that we have in Word. However, I want to show you that the thing is almost identical. So here we have that spread distance. So for spread distance, all we want to change is that here instead of boolean rule, we go with int rule, and here we need to change the value. By default, I will say 256 for spread and destroy. For the pump, I will reduce it to 128, and for the depth, I will reduce it to, I don't know, this is the hard one for me. 10 was my original notes, but let's see, I will make it 64. Okay, now you notice that we have to change these names. This is spread distance, this is destroy distance, pump distance, and pump depth. Now I have many more rules to add, but as I said, I just wanted to show you that adding different types of the game rule is actually the same thing. You just change the type here, and the value properly. So I will comment these guys so that you have a note there. I will go back to my configs and I will add these things here. So they are all integers in my notes. So I will come and add them here. We have goo spread distance, goo destroy distance, goo pump distance, and goo pump depth. Why are you yelling at me here? Oh well, we will figure things out. Okay, that's because of the semicolon at the end. Then I will have goo, actually, yeah, air bomb goo chance. I will copy this guy and I will actually remove this to the new line. Then we have chunk bomb. And don't worry if you don't know what these are. These are different block entities that we will add and they will do things as we progress forward. So we have lava eating goo chance, lava generating goo chance. Then we have stone bomb goo chance, towering goo chance, water eating goo chance, water generating goo chance, and after towers, I forgot one thing I think, and that is tunneling. So tunneling goo chance. Then we have more, and that is lava pump goo cooldown, and the last one is the water pump cooldown. And now that I think about it, these two are related to the goo, but I think I will have machines. Well, we will see how this works later. So let's go by adding a section and my default values. These are the commands, and this one has no new line, and this is the last line. So I will keep it there. I will copy this guy. I will paste it there, and I will say this is goo block settings like so. And then we have a comment, add pair comments. Do I want to have a comment here? Yeah, why not? The max distance for all goo blocks to spread or destroy in the world. Then I want to add a pair of, I did move my values into the, okay, reference. So I will add these and config keys. This is the goo, this is the, what did I call it? Goo spread distance. Oh, I don't have the keys yet. Okay, and this is goo destroy distance. Okay, this is the values, this is the values. And yeah, I know that I'm generating tons of errors, but hey, I'm just defining my API and then moving forward. Then we will have a comment because this one is the pump configurations, I think. Yeah, the max distance and depth for lava and water pump goo blocks. Then I will have two of these, one for goo pump distance, like so, one for goo pump depth. And I'm not gonna add everything in front of the camera. I think this is enough. So right now I will say create constant field, and all I have to do is hit enter and here give a name. So this will be goo.spread.distance. Going back again, constant field goo.destroy.distance, goo.pump.distance. And by the way, you should remember how to use the config library already because it was a helper in our main project when we were developing it, but I just dissected it and moved it to another place. Okay, now we will add a constant, and this is an int, and I will say that, hey, please behave. The spread distance was 256, and this is config default value, so I will cut it from there. I will paste it there. I will put a space there, and you see that I'm not using some of these, I think. Public static. It shouldn't be static. Why are you static? Why are you not static here? Okay, I understand. Remove the static. Yeah, that will work. So then we have this guy, copy, just make it duplicate, put the name, destroy distance. Then we have the goo pump distance. So Control D, goo pump was 128, and Control C, duplicate the depth. I decided to go with 64, and basically we are done. I will stop the video here and I will add the rest of the configs because I have many integers as chances and I have to add them, and then the cooldowns, as you remember from the game rules, I have the chances, I have the cooldowns, I need to add them here. And honestly, I think I will remove this guy from here and from here because we already had seen it in front of the camera. There is no need to keep it in the repository. Now that we added our configs for the config file, we need to assign the values for the config file, and honestly, I think I will just copy one of these and paste it, and now I have to go up and get the goo spread distance and put it here equals to goo spread with goo spread, and that's it. Now it's being assigned, and all I have to do is duplicate things and get the names, copy and paste, and if something is not matching up between the configs, config keys and the reference, then I will just go on and paste the things properly from these config files into the config keys and config reference, but chances are that I already have the proper naming. I will pause the video and come back when it's finished. Okay, now that we have added all the configs, we need to remember that we have different things with different namings that may need to be added to our datagen for translation. So we need to open the datagen, base, and English language provider. Now we need to remember that when we have things inside configs, basically we don't need to add anything to the language data provider, but the rules are different. For the rules, now we have to add our own language provider, and this is why they are asking for a text, because they will show it on the UI in the Word. And this is where we need to add an entry like this one. I will remove the effect dot, and here we will add mod ID plus dot goo category, and we will say goo. This is our category display in the configs for the rules. Now each rule that we add is using its own name, and we need to add this to our language file again. So the way we should do that is that we will add entries in our language file. However, let's see if I say builder.add and we go with the rules dot the lava pump active, for example, we will provide a string, and you see that it's asking for an item or a block, and these are not items or blocks. So instead, I will use the translation key, and the key here is game rule dot the name that I want. So the first rule is goo spread, and I will use goo dot spread here, and I will change this guy to goo dot spread. Then we say should goo spread, game rule goo. Let's see, what's the next one? Lava pump dot goo dot active. So I will take this guy and I will say should lava pump goo work, and instead of lava I have water here. And that's our three different rules for the translation. I did add the category, however, I think because it's an identifier and then the reference text, I think that this text is being used. We will take a note at that in a few minutes. However, remember, we have added things to our translation, so we need to run the data gen. Also, we have added things to configs, although our configs will load themselves automatically, but I prefer to remove that ini file just to make sure. And then we need to come to Gradle Ultra IO, run data gen, so that we make sure that our language file is being provided, and then we run the game, and I will come back to you when the game is up and ready. Okay, I forgot to put this game rule dot in front of these two, and between the pause and resum of the video I added them. As you see, I generated the language file, so these three game rules are being added, and at the end of the language file we have ultraio.goo.category. Okay, however, we did remove the ini, so when I was running the data gen I got these errors that says failed to get the integer config value, blah blah blah. My hope is that when I run the client on ultraio it will generate the ini, because it should do that. And if it doesn't make it, the only reason would be that between the transfer of the file from my helper folder into the configs library I did screwed something up. So let's wait and see. Now when we see the first entry for logging the main, that is when we should see our ini. Before that we are not, because we are not initializing the mod, we are just building the stuff, and we should wait for that. It may take few seconds, sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's not, depending on the changes that you had in your folder structure, in your mod, in your code, everywhere. And this time it's taking its sweet time. Okay, this Scala error is not mine, basically it's from one of the mods that I added to the list, and I'm waiting for my own entry. Here we go, we have the initialized blah blah blah. Of course I need to reload from the disk, but hopefully it will come up and show itself. If it didn't, just reload the config from the list. Here's your ini, and if you look at the end you will see that we have this goo block settings with the configs, with the comments, and this was the last entry. So our configs are being generated. Now Minecraft is up. Here's a question, where is the game rules? Well, if you create a new world and if you go into more, here are the game rules, and ours should have the name goo. So player, mobs, spawning, drops, world updates, chat, miscellaneous, and here we go, goo. Now you notice that these are yellow, mine is not yellow. That's irrelevant. Basically you have a text, you can use whatever color you want in that text with the styling and stuff like that. I'm not going to enter that phase right now, but here's the thing, should goo spread is okay, should the lava pump goo work, but this one, game rule water pump goo active, it's not working. Basically the only reason is that if I take a look at here, this is the name that I'm using here, and this is the name that I'm using here. So that was only the name. However, as you see, we have the game rules that we can turn on and off, and at the same time we have the configs that we can change, and that was the goal here. Now what will happen if we go into the previously generated world? Basically it didn't have the game rules, but it should add the default game rules. So if I say game rule and I will say should, and we don't see it, so spread or goo.spread to true, it will work. So game rule, and this is lava pump goo active to true, it will work. Game rule water pump goo active, this is the name. I'm not gonna run it because the name will change the next time we run the game. However, here's the thing, the default values are true. So if I add any game rule to the game and my previous world, as you see, didn't have that game rule, the moment I step into this world, the default values would be assigned to the world and the game will be ready to roll. Okay, now take note, the goo blocks that we have is bridge goo, chunk goo, lava eating and lava generating, lava pumping, towering and tunneling, water eating and generating, and then pumping. None of those bomb goos will show up either inside your creative tab or it shouldn't show up inside your REI. But take note, here we have air bomb goo, chunk bomb goo, and stone bomb goo, and later we will have another bomb. And normally you shouldn't see these inside the REI because the aim here is that you will see only the blocks that you can craft. Give at player, what we want is ultra IO colon air goo bomb, and then I want a 64 of that. And this is how you can give yourself something that shouldn't be in REI. This is exactly the block that we will work with in the next episode. However, if you recall, and if you don't recall, I will talk about it in the next video, we will need an ingredient. And if I remember correctly, it should be copper rod. Yeah, it's copper rod. Okay, so in the next video, whenever I put an air goo bomb and I right click on it with the copper rod, something should actually happen. The functionality is not there yet, and if you want to see that thing is happening, when we say on use with item, this is a return, that's okay. And before here you can say logger dot log n, and I'm not sure what logger are you importing? Okay, main dot logger, and don't I have log n log r, for example, activated. Okay, so I will use something that you rarely see me using it, and that is single hot swap. And it's not behaving. Why are you not behaving? Because I'm not inside the debug mode. Okay, let's run it in debug mode, because if you were in debug mode you could run this hot swap and you didn't need to rerun the game. Basically this would work. Let's get the game up and running. By the way, I will come back and talk about the changes in the goo base class in the next video, because right now I'm using the stuff from my library, and the library that contains gblock, if you are wondering, is GRalib, and this is the heart of our abstraction layer for the blocks and block entities in general. So I need to come back and cover a few different things here, and for example this guy, and tell you what is going on. But that will happen in the next videos when we are going to talk about the block entity we have here. Now, if you wonder why I'm getting errors or actually warnings on a Scala, the reason is that right now my mod doesn't have any fluid container like a tank. So I have to add a mod called large fluid tanks, and this is written in Scala, and it is needing that scalable CATS force fabric. I'm not sure if this error comes from the scalable or the large fluid tanks, but one of these two is causing this error. And if you wonder why I have lithium and sodium, the reason is that I'm recording while I'm running the game and the frame rate drops. So using sodium and lithium helps me having a better frame rate. So if I come back to the game, the mini HUD that I have on top left will show me the frame rate, I think. Yeah, as you see, I start with 15 and 19, then I'm jumping to 30, frame rate 7 and 9, and even with using the sodium and lithium on top, because I'm recording at the same time, my frame rate drops, and you see that now I have 60 and 70. So if I come back here and hit clear all, and coming back here, put one block down and right click with copper, we should see an entry. Here we go. But we have two. One of them is render thread from the client, that's okay. Then we have this server thread. So right now we are sure that on the server I'm activating the block, and that's exactly what I want, because in the next videos when we start working with the goo blocks, this is the functionality that we want. We will right click the goo block with the copper rod, and as you will see in the code, we will consume that copper rod, stack decrement. So we will reduce that one copper rod that we used, and basically we are setting the state of the block to be powered. We will take a look at that powered state later and how we can change the states using our library in the next videos. But the bottom line is that right now I'm ready to roll with the configs, with the game rules, and and back to where we need to be to start programming our Ergo bomb. One extra thing that I will cover right here and right now is that some months ago, when I started writing my Goo textures on the hard drive, I encountered a situation that my game was really stuttering with 1 frame per second unless I would add sodium. Now, this is not the case anymore. I did wonder what was the cause of it. And because I have covered the animated textures right now in the channel, I need to mention it somewhere, and this is a good place as any to mention it. If you ever have MC Meta for your animated texture, always check that nowhere in your meta you will have a key as interpolated or interpolation, one of these keywords. At some point it may say interpolation colon some number. Remove that. Minecraft is not interpolating the pixels and their colors between 2 frames. By adding it there, you are putting a huge mathematical overhead for Minecraft to interpolate one texture to another texture between the frames. And don't worry if you don't understand what is a frame. We will come back and talk about frames and ticks in the next video. So by adding that interpolation, you are dropping a huge mathematical overhead on top of Minecraft just to make the transition of the texture from one frame to the other one smoother. And you will never ever see that smooth transition, funny enough. So you're just telling Minecraft to, hey, do massive amount of animation calculations that you will never use. And I had it on many of my Goo blocks and some of the animated machine blocks, and that was causing a huge drop on the frame rate. So I had removed those things. Trust me, the result is nothing practically possible to see. But I did another thing at the same time. This is my Ergo bomb right now, and this is what I did try at some point. At some point I did try to remove these blocks, and I made a 6 or 7 frame rate animation. I was trying to debug that slow animation process that was causing the drop in frame rate. So I thought, okay, this is 30 frames of animation. Maybe for some odd reason, a PC can't handle that. That was a funny thing, but I did try it and it didn't work. So if you see anything with the dot back, especially around the Goo blocks or anywhere else like this one, these were the blocks that I tried to remove the size of the animation frame to 6 or 7, and they did not work. I'm removing them right now because they are not needed anymore, and I rolled back to that 30 frame rate and it's working. Now, if you noticed at the start of the game, I had 16 and 7 frame rate per second. If I stop recording, that would be 20 to 30 frame rates per second. However, it's still slower than my normal frame rate per second. If I'm recording, my normal frame rate would be around 40 to 60. If I stop recording, it would be around 60 to 90. Now, I have sodium on top, so whenever I start the game while recording, I have to wait for around 10 to 20 seconds, and the game will load the chunks and everything it's doing in the backstage at the start of the game, and after that, the game runs smoothly. In the next video, we will come back and talk about the concept of frames, frame per second, and updates, fixed updates, and ticks. All of this talk process is to make you familiar with what is a tick. If you like these videos, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on that bell so that when I publish a new video, you will get informed. Have fun, everyone. Bye.